get a chance to catch up with a very dear friend and a fellow who has been in the bucking horse business and the rodeo business for a long time, Hank Franzen, Powder River Rodeo Company. And this is going to be a fun opportunity to do an interview about a great horse, Miss Congeniality. She passed away sadly a few days ago. But Hank, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for your time. And tell us where you are. I want to start right there with where you are and that tribute to Miss Congeniality that's right behind you.
Well, we're here at our house, and we took one of the car bays and made it into somewhat of a trophy room to put a lot of the accolades of all our world champion horses that they've won. And behind me here is Miss Congeniality's corner, or her wall of all her world champion plaques and NFR top three plaques and all the things that she's done. And here beside me is a bronze that the Montana Wall of Fame did of Dan Edbauer, or I mean Mortensen, and Miss Congeniality is another horse they wanted in that bronze, and we're really tickled about it. It turned out really great.
Yeah,
it's funny how everybody remembered her and wants her part of history.
Yeah, it's that thing is beautiful. If you ever get to see it up close and personal, it is. It's big and it's heavy and it's really pretty. Hey, Miss Congeniality was 26 years old. You called her Miss C on the ranch. She passed away a week ago Sunday, but I would be curious as to your thoughts. You've had so many great horses, but there were some that in my mind, Gaddafi, Miss C, Craig at Midnight, maybe were the elites that even stood above the rest. What was the impact of her on your program?
Oh, it was huge. It was kind of the time we purchased the mares from Johnny Morris, and I was fortunate enough to get a stud from Harry Vold, cut the cards, and he with those mares and that stud, that was kind of the start of our breeding program. And for Miss Congeniality coming out of it right off the bat, we weren't in the business very long, but we fell into some very good choices and had a lot of good horses right off the get-go.
The stallion that sired her, cut the cards, as you mentioned, came from Harry Vold. And I was just scrolling through your website. He produced multiple NFR qualifiers in his career, like 50 of them. That horse was incredible as a producer, as a sire.
Yeah, just off, like you say, just off our ranch, there's over 30 some horses that have went to the NFR, ought to cut the cards, and that foundation mares. And then there was some daughters out of those original mares that sent horses to the finals too, that go back to cut the cards. So yeah, he was really huge, and he was out of Little Baldy and in a mare called Crazy Blaze, Harry Vold, and I stumbled on him. He was in the wild horse race at Cheyenne, and bucked so good that later in the week at Cheyenne we put him in the draw, or Harry did, and he really bucked in the bronc riding, and I was able to purchase him there and bring him home, and the following year put him on some mares.
Cut the Cards was in the wild horse race in Cheyenne. You spotted him, and he bucked so good they put him in the draw, and then you ended up buying him.
Well, Harry, Scott Walton, all of us around there, at the time, we really didn't know he was a stud. He was within a bunch of them young horses that a guy's got to haul somewhere and go through. And that set was there, and he stood out right off the bat. So we put him in the draw, and he bucked once there. And then I hauled him out of Cheyenne after the rodeo was over.
I'll be darned. Tell me about the mare that Miss Congeniality is out of. You mentioned Johnny Morris. It was a Johnny Morris mare, red roan by the name of Red Bird. Did you have a lot of luck with her offspring?
Yeah, it was funny. All our females colts all bucked really, really well, probably exceptional. And the geldings were really good using horses. We had one called Distinguished Gentleman, and we had a lot of geldings that that Redbird had raised that were really good horses, but not a horses of the year or, Hall of Fame type.
Right. We were talking before we started this. Miss C's first trip to the NFR was 2002. Tell me that story, because she was only a 4-year-old. And you told me before we started, you were actually a little hesitant to send a 4-year-old to the NFR, but she ended up being one of the top 3 horses at that year's National Finals Rodeo.
Yeah. We bucked her that spring. We had always do groundwork and shoot procedure with all our young horses before we go to high school rodeos or buck them at all. And we didn't really have these mechanical dummies and all this that we use now, to go through the colts. So, we kind of hauled them to get to where the kids were. And she bucked at Thermopolis, and it was weird. The first trip, she had her front feet under her when she was kicking, didn't stumble. Looked like she had been bucking for 2 or 3 years, the way she handled herself, kicking and on the ground and that. And then we went to Bellefouche to the rodeo on the 4th, and she really bucked there. And we all were sitting around like, man, this horse, we got to find out. We got to name her. She didn't even have a name yet. She was just a young colt. And I got to give a shout out to Mark Swingler. He was sitting there around the beer cooler when we were naming colts, and he's the one that actually come up with the Miss Congeniality. And we all thought that was super, and that was her name from then on.
Later on they named a movie after her, so obviously it was, is the right name at the. I don't know which one come out first, but anyway. And then we're rodeoing through the summer, and then we're at KC, the Deke Latham Memorial Rodeo, and that fall, and Red Lemmel was the bronc riding director and was there, and he said, I want to take that horse to the finals. And I said, boy, a 4-year-old, that's a lot to ask for a 4-year-old. She's awful good. I don't want her to go down there and have an off day and you guys get an expire name and not go again. And he said, well, we'll just buck her once. And I said, well, we can do that, and put her in the re-rides the other trip. And she was out the 3rd go around and drew Billy Etbauer in his heyday, and ended up bucking him off. And then she's the high marked horse there at the finals at the time. So, she's got a chance of a 4-year-old to win an award. So we did put her back in the draw, I think, come back the 7th round or 8th round. And she ends up winning 3rd of the NFR of being a 4-year-old. One of those plaques is over Hank's left shoulder as you're looking at that awards wall of Miss Congeniality. She needed a big wall, didn't she, Hank? I mean, she got a pretty good sized chunk of that room, didn't she?
Yeah, she's got her wall. Gaddafi has a wall. Craig at Midnight's got another part of the wall. Our trophy room got small fast when we started hanging things up.
Tell me what it was about her that made her so good. She was a really eye-catching bay mare with a star, right?
Yeah, and a little snip on her nose, a little bit.
But what was it about her that made her so good for so long?
Her personality and demeanor. She was just so kind to be around, to load. She just walked in there, walked in the chute. Her personality and her size. She was a big horse. Craig at Midnight weighed 17 something. I bet Miss Congenia was all a 1600 plus. I mean, them are big horses. And to have that athletic ability and have that size, they just, when they leave that chute and those judges are standing there and that big of a horse and blow out of there and kick over their head, everybody just stops and watches.
Did you ever keep track how many times they were 90 on her? Because I know they were 90 on her a lot.
If they rode her, that's where they were at. I don't really have a tally on it, but I mean, we can think back to the 90-point rides in certain guys, Anthony Bello, Billy Etbauer, Rod Hay, I think was a bunch of points on her a few times. But she was just one of those horses, if you could ride her right, you were going to win some money. And she never tricked anybody. She didn't have she wasn't high-headed or her rein stayed the same when them bronc riders rode her. And she just left there so honest, and they all knew what she was going to do. And then she got so big, she didn't barely fit in a chute. I mean, it was uncomfortable for her to fit between the two slide gates. And that's, and when a horse leaves a chute that hard, the bronc riders know that, and they try to get by that first jump. And all the great horses, Rusty, a Harry's, and all them, they were thinking out tricks to buck the guys off. The guys were figuring out tricks to try to get by them, and that would get them to stall through their career. And that's when we started bringing her head over the back of the chute to give her more room so she could leave, out the middle of the chute rather than roll around the post. And so we were always trying to stay one head of the bronc riders, switching from a left delivery to a right delivery. And it's just all part of horsemanship and realizing that they're telling you something and you try to read it and try to make it better for the horse.
Number 3 Saddle Bronc of the Year in 2003, 2004, the Reserve Saddle Bronc of the Year. That year, she was the reserve champion at the NFR. 2005, she won the first of her 2 world titles. She won the second one in 2007, won multiple Dodge National Circuit Finals rodeo, won multiple Circuit Finals awards in her career, 11 straight trips to the NFR. She walked away. The plaques that are behind you there, Hank, she left a bunch of NFRs and a bunch of DNCFRs and a bunch of those rodeos with some kind of an award. It was pretty rare for her to not come home with something, wasn't it?
Well, it was. And when the Circuit Finals was in Pocatello, I mean, it was a who's who. I mean, Kessler's, Sankey, I mean, everybody that was known for raising bucking horses were there. And to say you had the best horse coming out of that herd where everybody was coming, it was special. And just like the NFR, of course, there's 60 to 70 some contractors there, and to have somebody, and that was back when the contractors picked them, not the judges. And that says a lot too for another group of guys to honor your animal, means a lot to us also.
Hank, talk to me about how you and your family, your wife Lori, your son John now is really developed into a great eye for talent, bucking horses and bucking bulls both, I think, in your partnership with the D&H Cattle Company. But talk to me about how you have learned to handle your horses through the years. You talked about when Miss C first bucked when she was young, and that was back before dummies. You really kind of need to bring young horses along right, just so they learn how to stand up and find their feet and handle different arena conditions. This is a whole show all by itself, maybe, but talk a little bit about how you start these horses and how you bring them along, because you've had so much good luck with so many great horses.
Well, like Lori, she grew up on a ranch. I was a horseback about the same time I started walking, rode to school first 5 years of school, little country school we had. So been around horses ever since I could talk. And John's been the same way. Jill, Lori, I mean, we're so in tune with it. And we think a horse is a horse. If you're going to rope on him or have him as a bucking horse, it's all making sure you don't put him in bad situations. Feed and genetics, you have to have that right off the start. But you don't want to put a horse in a position that, that would hinder their future. So a lot of groundwork in the chutes and this and that. When the gate opens and you pull the flank, that's kind of on their own. That's where the feed and genetics come in. But building them up to that and putting them in the right situation at the right time when they're young, and don't overbuck them, and know that you're wanting that horse to be a superstar when he's 10 and 12 years old. Don't burn them out when they're 4, 5, and 6. You just gotta hope you put them in the right situation and draw the right jockey. Them guys that win the Triple Crown and that, a lot of it's the jockey. I mean, they interview him also, so it's getting the right guy on him at the right time and having the best experience and thinking down the road of where you want this horse to be, not at the moment at the rodeo when he bucks the first time.
I smile when you mention having the right jockey. We always talk about, I think people like me make the mistake too often of saying, um, Stetson Wright drew such and such a horse. It's just as important to say this horse, Miss Valley, daughter of Miss Congeniality, drew Stetson Wright. Casey Field just drew Two Buck Chuck. Two Buck Chuck just drew Casey Field. You know you're going to have a great matchup at some point there. I think that's a mistake sometimes that we make. We don't talk enough about the horses getting matched up with the right guys.
Yeah, I mean it's huge. It's who's hot at the time. I mean, and we see it in rodeo, and judging is it's a human opinion on if the guy made the best ride or not. And it's all, some guys are on top of the world and win wherever they're at, and other guys might come on later in the fall. But you just hope that when the horse is young and is building its career, that it hits the right notes when it needs to, and has the right trip in the right place. And that's where John and I shine, is we try to put those horses in the best situation that they can be in. We make a wrong call like everybody. I don't care any
Sure.
NFL coach or whatever. Sometimes you make a wrong call, but you have to be aware of it and always thinking of the animal, and listen to the animal. He'll tell you if something's off or not. And we don't read that all the time, right? But you have to take time to sit down, and the animals are always smarter than us, and try to learn from them. They don't really learn from us. We just try to put them in a good situation when they're young.
Hank, did Miss C spend the latter part of her life, for a lot of years at least, at Dr. Greg Veniclausen's place? Is that the way I understand? Because something happened where she was not able to herself carry a foal to full term, but you were able to flush a bunch of embryos, and you still have a whole lot of really good horses out of her on the ground.
Yeah, she was very fertile, but she had torn her cervix in one of her pregnancies, having a colt, and she would collect fluid. She would breed back and then collect fluid and lose the colt. So that's how she got down there to Canyon, Texas, is to see why she wasn't carrying those colts full term. And we found that out. So the only way to get colts out of her was to breed her, flush her, and put the embryos in a
Right.
reset mare. And she had been down there after since we retired her. That's where she had been.
I think I'm right in saying that the most well-known of her babies right now is a horse that is, if she's not my favorite horse in the PRCA, she's one of my top 2 or 3 in Miss Valley, who has already carved out a heck of a niche for herself. She's been a very good producer. I've always wondered if the mares don't get enough credit for what they pass on to their offspring. And Miss Congeniality's babies tend to buck pretty good, don't they?
Well, they've been outstanding. She's raised a lot of great colts, and now her colts, we're breeding them, and I think we're going to have a lot of success out of that. Miss Valley is unique, and with the long flowing mane, like Miss C had, and the personality, they don't get picked on, and they don't pick on other animals, but they kind of hang by themselves, and but they get along with the other livestock, and it's eerie how that, when you breed that livestock, how the offspring resemble the mare. And if you don't have a good set of mares, you're never going to make it. A good stud will let you rodeo on some horses, but if you don't have a foundation set of mares, genetically, it's almost impossible to go forward. You can get along, but you can't go forward and get better.
I think I could do a whole show with people who are way smarter than I am, which is most everybody, about the importance of what stallions pass on, the importance of what mares pass on. There are a lot of good horse people. I don't care if it's bucking horses or barrel horses, who look at the mares and say, yeah, that's where they get a lot of the talent, and that's where they get a lot of the genetics from. And when you got a mare like Miss Congeniality, if she can pass those traits on, you got something to work with there.
Well, exactly. And a lot of it was sitting at the coffee table with Marvin Brookman back in the day, when I didn't have my horse herd set up like we do now, and I had to go get a load from him to help me put on some of my rodeos. And like I said, my two idols is Marvin Brookman and Harry Vold. Harry was a great livestock man and a really a showman and was really great in, producing rodeos in the arena, plus his livestock. And Marvin Brookman was, I forgot half of it, and I wish I taped all the conversations we had, but it's just learning from them guys, and they raised them and they had them and they knew what it was like to lose one, and it was just, it's kind of a bond you get with guys that raise horses. It just, there's a lot of stuff unsaid, but I kind of feel sorry for some of the guys that they buy and got great horses, but they miss out on this where they hit the ground and watch them grow up, and 4-year-olds to 5 to 6 and to go on. It's what keeps Lori and I and the kids going is those colts hitting the ground and doing everything for us, and they don't owe us anything, but Miss Congeniality bucked her heart out every time we hauled her somewhere, and then we retired her, and then she kept giving. She kept raising colts. It's just, I don't know how to put it in words, how we feel about our horses.
You think about Gaddafi's already in the Hall of Fame. Craig at Midnight did not. I wish he would have. And I'm not saying anything you don't already know. You lost a great one when he went down too early. And now you've got horses like Miss Valley and Two Buck Chuck and Blackleg, 3 of them that just come to the top of my head, that are all great. I don't know where you put Miss Congeniality in the line with Gaddafi and Craig, and those are the horses that helped to build your program.
Well, back at, when we got Gaddafi early in your contracting career, and then Miss C came right after that. I mean, we were hitting them with all cylinders, and then Frontier, the big Palomino Gilding, was reserve champion also once. So we had a lot of great horses and a lot of great success early. And Miss C was one of them that helped us get a lot of contracts. And that's when they started going with the winter tour and the summer tour and going to all those places. And she was winning awards, and those guys were winning money on them and being 90. They were so important on our young rodeo company, when they came along in the early stages.
The one thing about it, Hank, and you can speak to this as well as anybody can, because you raise most of your animals, is when you talked about how much fun it is to watch them hit the ground and watch them grow and get a chance to start to work with them when they're babies and do the things that you have to do to get them to be great bucking horses. But when you go that route, you don't know what you're going to have. I mean, you've got 4 years and a lot of feed and some vet bills and some other things, or 5 or 6, right? Invested in these horses before you ever know what you're going to have. If they're going to,
this room is full of the horses. Yeah, this room is full of the horses that won awards. I mean, there's lots of horses that we went through to get to this set, and you talk about the horses bringing 100,000 and this and that. We have that or more in the ones we've raised. It ain't like there's a lot of feed, and you don't know what you really have till they're probably 6. They'll show you a little promise as 4s, but till they get 6 or 7 and kind of get out on the road, you're still not sure. So yeah, it's a long process and a lot of cost to get one to 10 years old to know that they're solid, just like the guys are in the rope horses or bulldogging horses or whatever. It's a long process to get to there, and it's a lot of horses you go through to get that handful that work.
Yeah. Are there, the futurity world's big on the timed event side. Are there more opportunities for you to expose horses and get them used to the arena setting when they're younger now on the bucking horse side of things, or is that still a ways away?
We played the futurity quite a little in the beginning, and we had a lot of horses that had a lot of success. And to win those awards, you have to go to a lot of the futurities, and we had some really good 4-year-olds that we bucked in the fraternity that we thought could win the fraternity. And at the end of in the fall, we could see we put too many trips on that horse too soon. And it was ended up being a really nice horse, but we like to go to a fraternity here and there. But if you follow the fraternities to win the year-end award, I feel there's too many trips on that age of an animal. So we'd rather take our horses and put them in the right situation at the right rodeo, and the right facility is a lot of it. The right facility and the right ground and the right arenas for those young horses. And we decide where they're going to go and when they're going to buck. If they're going to get 2 trips when they're 5 or 4 trips or whatever. A lot of times you get to hauling them too much at the fraternities. I'm not against the fraternities, but if you're in the rodeo business and want horses to be superstars when they're 8 and 10 years old, to me, some of them get hauled too much young and they lose their spark.
Yeah. I feel like I say this every interview I do. I asked you for 10 or 12 minutes and we've been almost a half an hour. And I really appreciate that, Hank. It's fun to hear the stories. Okay. I want to ask you in particular, in the trophy room, kind of hidden there, and I don't know if you can reach it without knocking that bronze over, but is that a stick horse Miss Congeniality that I see there, right next to the model and right next to
it's that's just, people just send us this stuff and have this stuff made, and it's so unique and such a following on our horses. You know, you're only as good as the horses in the arena, but for people to do these special things and send them to us, it's just so unique and so humbling that, you know, these ranch raised horses, and a lot of people say they're not worth much, but they hit a lot of hearts of a lot of people, and it's so unique when we get these things.
So somebody just made that for you and sent it to you.
Yeah. It's cool. It's just they seen her and they watch them and see them at the finals and on TV a lot now. Back then they didn't get on TV very much. You know, sometimes if you watch the 10th round, you got to see them on TV, and now you can see every round and pretty much every rodeo. So the horses get more exposure than they did back when Miss Congeniality and Gaddafi and that were there. But the great ones, people come, they found ways of hearing about them and following them, even though we didn't have the exposure.
I've always thought, I felt this when I was with the Cowboy Channel. I still feel it now. I felt it for a long time in my 30-year career in the PRCA as a rodeo announcer, that one of the things that we've always needed to do a better job of in the rodeo business, they do real well with it in the PBR because they've only got one species of animal to deal with, is make the horses and the bulls and the livestock stars all by themselves. I wonder how big a deal Gaddafi or Miss Congeniality would have been if they'd have had all the television exposure and the internet. And if you want to follow somebody who's pretty good on social media, follow Powder River and John Franzen on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all that.
He's done a great job. He's a little more savvy about that than I am.
Yeah. Oh, he's way better at it than I am. I know that much. But if these horses could have had that the kind of exposure some of them get today, back in their day, Miss C would have been a whole lot bigger star than she was, I think.
Well, rodeo in general would be bigger now than it is. I mean, it's awful big, but if we could have got this out, you know, years ago, we would have been farther down the road we are now.
I'm going to ask you a horrible question to wrap this thing up with. Is there one memory? Is there one year? Is there one? I mean, she was the horse of the year twice. She was the reserve horse of the year in 2008. She went to the NFR 11 straight times. She started her career at the NFR bucking off Billy Epbauer as a 4-year-old. There aren't many stock contractors that can say they had bucking horses at the NFR when they were 4-year-olds. Is there one year or one thing about her that sticks out to you, Hank?
Well, I know when she was able to raise colts, she would win the world with a colt on her side, and then and then for some reason she didn't breed back or whatever, and she didn't have a colt, she would win in the top 3 of the NFR or the world. But it's funny, she was better when she had a colt on her side. We used to lease stock there to the Warbon at Idaho Falls, and that's where Anthony Bellows was 91 or 2 on her and won a rifle, and he wasn't able to take the rifle back to Australia, so he signed it and given it to us, and it's here in our trophy room. And Billy Edbauer was 90 some on her there also one time, and it was to take a year that she was really better than the rest. She was awful special every year, and I guess I can't pick a special year. It was just her career. And Harry Vold said, you don't know how great your horse is till you lose him, because that's the end of the story. But she just kept telling a story year after year after year, and just made us so proud. And she was so good to be around. And I mean, people just drove up to the arena and could spot her in a herd of horses and sit there and just watch her look around, and just, they were in awe of her presence, her demeanor, and her size. She was thought of. I mean, they appreciated her just standing in the pen, let alone bucking in the arena.
You guys, so Hank, let me ask you one final question. You guys have done real well. Miss C was 1,600 pounds. We all remember how big Craig was. Not all of your horses are those big, ginormous horses like that, but you've done real well with those big, stout horses, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had a lot of success with big horses, and we try to. They can get too big and too clumsy. You still want one that's with a lot of athletic ability. But rodeoing back in the day, myself, around Reg Kessler, Marvin Brookman and them, the big feather-legged horses is what I rodeoed on and always was admired, Harry Vold's horses. So we tend to have a bigger horse than a lot of contractors. And we've been awful fortunate. Some that are bigger than normal and still have that athletic ability is just, it's just icing on the cake.
Yeah. She had to be a lot of fun to share with a lot of rodeo fans over 11 straight trips to the National Finals Rodeo. Hank, it's always a pleasure. I don't mind saying it all. The Franzen family has become on my list of really good friends, right there on the top level of that list. And it's fun to have a chance to tell these stories for Hank. And I really appreciate you and John and Lori, who are in the background helping to get this all set up. I really appreciate you guys' time today.
Well, we appreciate you. And like you said, losing these great horses, Craig, Gaddafi, Miss C, kind of like your grandparents. You love them to death, but they're going to a good place. So we're just happy she passed away in her sleep, and there wasn't any tragedy. And that's all you can ask for is they had a good life, and we're awful proud of them.
26 years old when she passed away a week ago Sunday, March the 17th, I think. Hank Franzen, I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you somewhere soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.